Welcome everyone. I'm Shubham Thakur, a climate journalist and a CBAM expert myself. I've been working in this domain for the past 5, 6 years, and CBAM landscape and ecosystem has changed, particularly from 1st of January this year, as it has entered into mandatory reporting phase, which means that everything that was voluntary other than quarterly submission under the terms and conditions before December last year has become mandatory this year. That includes your quarterly report submission, accurate data collection, how to use default values, verifications, you approved methods, and everything. In this webinar, we will understand more about EU new rules and regulations of how to use default values and what are the updated regulations and compliance mandatory rules on EU approved verifications for data that you submit or the importer submits to the European authorities. To discuss this, I have two experts, Nilesh Bhattad. Sir is CEO and founder of CleanCarbon.ai, India's CBAM first platform, which not only focuses on CBAM reporting, but also creating a lot of insights on that. Clean Carbon works closely with the Ministry of Commerce and Industries, Services Exports Promotion Council, EPC India, and FICCI and multiple other platforms to empower Indian suppliers and European buyers on seamless CBAM compliance. They have generated more than, I think, 1,000 reports. They have about 500 clients, if I'm not wrong. Sir will throw light more on that. Second important guest that I have to take the discussion ahead is Priti Patil, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. She is CBAM tech expert, and she has so far helped hundreds of clients and suppliers from Indian sides and their vendors and local suppliers in the entire CBAM ecosystem in understanding and adapting to the technical aspect of how to ensure accurate CBAM compliance. Thank you so much, everyone. May I request Mr. Nilesh Bhattad, sir, to give his opening remarks, and then we'll start the webinar. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Shubham, for that brief introduction. And I welcome everyone for this webinar. And we appreciate your presence and your time. So just to give you the background, I think Shubham already outlined that. So the point here that we want to discuss is CBAM is entering into definitive phase. Taxes calculation is already started from 1st January. We also have seen for some of our customers whose shipments landed in Europe in this month or maybe in last couple of weeks, their shipments were stopped if since they didn't had CBAM reports. So of course we supported them and immediately gave those CBAM reports. But the point which needs to be highlighted here is now shipments are getting stopped at the port, and it is mandatory to have CBAM report to export your products which comes under CBAM. And also for importer, he needs to be authorized declarant to import your product in Europe. There are quite a few changes, specifically around the tax calculation, what we estimated earlier, and now how the current numbers are, specifically around default values, how impactful it is for you, especially in terms of taxes. That is also we are going to understand. We are also going to understand the scrap. So earlier, all scrap was considered under one umbrella, but now under the new regulation, they have differentiated the pre-consumer and post-consumer scrap. So that is also very critical for Indian exporters. And the other important aspect is the verification of the data. So now they still not have announced the agencies which are going to audit it, but whatever calculations that we do or whatever data that we submit, it will be audited by EU appointed agencies or bodies, And that's why it is also very important to make sure that we have the correct data and respective documentation to support that data. So about clean carbon, so we are a CBAM specialized company. We only focus and work on CBAM and have helped more than 200 companies and around 700 to 800 plus their suppliers. So in all, 1,000 companies you can consider where we have supported for CBAM, and more than 7,000 reports in total that we have generated so far for most of our customers. Also, we have built a platform which automates this entire process. All these new changes that are in place, we are already are in the process of implementing all those changes, and very soon you will see all the new new regulatory changes in the platform reflected, so that it would be easy for all of you, whoever is using our platform, to make sure that you are fully compliant. And yes, that is all. I think I'll pass it to Preeti to explain in detail every change which is there, which is going to impact all the exporters from India specifically, or any exporter for that matter. I think I see few people have joined outside India as well. So any exporter which is exporting to Europe, what are the points that he need to consider is what we are going to discuss in detail. So again, I thank you everyone, and I pass it to Preeti.
Thank you, Nilesh.
कल हम लोग बैठे थे मीटिंग में, कल ही डिस्कशन हुआ दिन में। Next.
Hello. So yeah, let me share my screen first to start the presentation. Yeah, so first of all, I welcome all of you in this webinar today about EU CBAM verification and default values. Earlier, we had more generic webinar to discuss all the changes that will be applicable in definitive phase. So now today's focus is specifically regarding verification process and the default values. So from 1st of January 2026, when we started the definitive phase of EU CBAM, CBAM requires mandatory third-party verification of all your emissions data that is declared by the importer. So verification includes mandatory factory visit and on-site audit, at least for first year. After that, the verifier can decide whether are they satisfied with the last year's verification or not, or maybe there might be different conditions in that they will continue visiting factories every year, or they can have virtual online audit for the factory for alternate year. The objectives of this verification process will be to review your process flows, energy systems, meters, energy meters or heat meters. Those are instruments, measuring instruments installed in the factory, your fuel inputs, production lines, and identified scope. So scope means whatever production process you have you included all the relevant sub processes in the CBAM, or have you included all the relevant materials, fuels, other aspects of the production process? Everything should be measured and should be included as per the CBAM guidelines. So they will verify that scope against your CBAM report. The second objective is confirm the accuracy, completeness, and traceability of emission data. So they will check for accuracy, they will check for completeness, and they will also look for traceability of that data. So CBAM report will have your total production quantity, but they will check whether that total number is traceable in your other documents, other data systems. Ensure emissions are calculated as per EU CBAM methodology and not any other methodology. So we need to have CBAM reports generated as per EU CBAM guidelines. Even if you have your emissions calculated as per some other guidelines or some local methods, that is not acceptable in this review. You need to have to follow EU CBAM methodology for emissions calculation. This verification is going to prevent underreporting or data manipulation. So they will look for the cases where scope is not correctly identified or numbers are not correctly reported to deliberately get the lower emission numbers. Or are there any data manipulations done? So all these things will be checked during this audit. This verification applies to finished goods as well as their precursors. So all the precursors and their data needs to be verified. Exporters need to get all the CBAM declarations verified by an accredited verifier before declaration deadline, which is in September 2027. So you need to get your all data verified well before September 2027 so that in case of any non-conformities or any issues during the audit reported during the audit, you get sufficient time to fix those errors and get the verification certificate. Verification evidences must be kept for at least 6 years after the reporting year and made available for audit on request whenever they ask for it. So all the evidences need to be maintained safely for next 6 years after reporting. Now let's see what kind of errors are allowed or acceptable and what will not be accepted. So materiality threshold or acceptable error threshold is 5% of the total reported emissions. That means the error in your reported emissions is acceptable till it is less than 5%, but above that they will be reported as errors. Actual values are rejected and default values get applied by automatically if the site access is denied for this audit, or if data is incomplete or methodology is not compliant with EU CBAM. So in all these cases, you will not get the verification certificate, and if that verification certificate is not available, then automatically tax will get calculated based upon the default values for that products. Verifiers will assess both quantitative as well as qualitative errors. So quantitative errors examples are incorrect fuel or electricity emissions factors. Production or raw material volumes are not matching, or missing precursors emissions. So sometimes like some items needs to be identified as precursor and not identified as precursor. So that embedded emission is not covered in the final SE. That is error, CBAM error. The qualitative or structural errors are like incorrect system boundaries, not identifying all the relevant sub-processes, incomplete precursor coverage, so poor traceability of the supplier's data, no auditable evidence of calculations. All these are examples of qualitative errors. Those can be reported by the reviewers. Now let's talk about the responsibilities regarding the verification, who owns what. So EU importer, who will be the authorized CBAM declarant, they hold full legal responsibility for submission of verified emissions data to EU authorities. They also bears the liability of errors, non-compliance, or use of default values. Ultimately, they have to purchase the CBAM certificates based upon the verified emissions and surrender it to EU. Now, as an exporter, what is our responsibility as the third country manufacturers? There is no direct legal obligation under EU law, but commercially we are going to get impacted. Exporter must generate installation level emissions data, allow on-site physical audits by the verifier, provide transparent production, energy and mass balancing records, so all the evidences required for the audit. And failure to cooperate will result importer forced to use default values. So in any case, the verification fails or the data is not available, the CBAM report is not generated, the importer is forced to use default values, and that may result loss of business for the exporter. Next point is about precursor or upstream supply. So what is their responsibility? They are also impacted by the by EU CBAM regulation. So their responsibility is providing actual emissions data for precursor material. So whatever goods, even if they are not exporting any products to EU, if their customers are exporting the products, they are bound to send the actual emissions data for that precursor, which is used in the goods exported to EU. The data must be auditable and verifiable. They cannot say that like it is our confidential data, we cannot share it, we don't have it. That is not acceptable reasoning. So that data must be auditable, verifiable. Missing or unverifiable precursor data directly results in precursor default values getting applied, which finally results in the higher CBAM cost. So all three parties are responsible at some stage in this EU CBAM. So here one table will give us more idea about this, like financial responsibility. So CBAM shifts compliance cost upstream, even though legal obligation is with EU importer. So EU importer is finally responsible for paying tax, and legal obligation is for the reporting is with EU importer, but the cost is transferred to the exporter. Third party CBAM, in this table left hand side there is cost element, and right hand side there is impacted entity. So third party CBAM verifier audit fees will be borne by manufacturer or exporter. Physical on-site audit cost will be to manufacturer. CBAM administration and declaration related cost will be for EU importer. CBAM certificates purchasing cost will be for EU importer, but they often try to pass it back to the manufacturer as part of pricing. And any additional cost due to default values. So if like market average values are certain, there are some average values, and in your case the default values needed to be used, so definitely tax is going to be higher than average tax for that particular type of products. So ultimately the EU importer will transfer that cost to exporter via pricing pressure or as part of their contracts. So at any cost, we need to try to get SC numbers which are lower and like decent numbers, so that we get minimum cost. Default values are going to increase our cost. We'll see that in detail in next section of this webinar. So first, let's see who are accredited verifiers. So EU accreditors, CBAM verifiers work based upon EU ETS or ISO 14064 or 17029 verification rules. These there are already EU ETS is already in operation, and that is internal EU's tax system for carbon tax, and verifiers are already active in that area. So similar rules will be applied for the third country manufacturers verification. These accredited verifiers will be approved by EU national accreditation body, which is called as NAB. Their expectations are like expectations from these accredited verifiers are they need to be having proven experience in EU ETS or equivalent GHG verification, industrial processes, for example, steel manufacturing and aluminum manufacturing, etc. They need to be independent and impartial, so that their audit structure should be independent, impartial. There should not be any conflict of interest, and they should be able to they should have ability to conduct physical on-site audits outside EU in third countries. Still, formal public EU list is not yet available for CBAM accredited verifiers. We are waiting for that more details from EU on this regard. Now let's see what documents and evidences are required for this verification, CBAM verification. The verifiers will ask for these documents, and we need to be ready with those. So for installation level evidences, these are just examples. There can be more, but these are main documents that will be needed. Process flow diagrams to understand what is your process and whether the scope that you have identified is correct or not. Detailed production and throughput data, raw material and fuel consumption records, energy consumption data for fuel, electricity, measurement and calibration logs of instruments which are used for measuring this data. Then laboratory test reports wherever applicable, wherever available. So for emission factors, carbon content, then MTCs are there for material composition. So all those test reports are expected for material as well as fuel. Emission factors, sources and references for public emission factors. So if laboratory test results are not available, then emission factors from the public data sources can be used, but we need to provide the references source from where we have picked those. And in that case, we need to also provide full citation and justification note explaining why lab data was not available and why we needed to use the publicly available emission factors. EU CBAM expects the emission factors or carbon content values to be derived from the actual lab results, and those also expected periodically. Like you can't use like 2 years old record for the material specification. You need to have recent lab reports to justify that. And in case you are not using any actual lab test results, then we need to give the justification for that. Monitoring and calculation methodologies document. So what are your monitoring methodologies? What is your periodicity? What are your software systems storing that data? And how you are doing calculations, CBAM calculations. So all those document related to that, document that explains these methodologies is one of the important evidence that you need to submit. Then there are also precursor related evidences like supplier emission reports. If supplier has declared some SE numbers, so we need to have the emission reports CBAM reports for that emissions data. Verification statement for precursors. So if that data is already verified by the EU accredited verifier, then that verification certificate, your contracts with suppliers and traceability, other traceability documents. So this was related to verification. Now we will move to default values section. As far as possible, we should avoid default value, and I'll tell you why it is so. So these new country-specific default values will be applicable in definitive period. Till now, in transition phase, we were applying generic default values. They were same for all the countries, and they were based upon EU's worst performing installations. But now they have come up with the country-specific default values based upon that country's worst performing installations. So these values are pretty high. These are applied when actual data is missing for the product, when data is not verifiable or verified, verification certificate is not available, or when precursor data is unavailable or not verified. In all these cases, these default values get applied. These are often significantly higher than industry average because, as I explained earlier, those are based upon countries' worst performing units. These default values, important point to understand is default values are year specific. Every year they are going to change and they are expected to increase every year minimum by 10%. So for 2026, we will have certain values. They have already declared the values for 2027, which are more than 10% than the 2026 values. And every year it is going to get added. So burden of default value is going to get added by every passing year. Because EU discourages the use of default values. They expect everyone to calculate their emissions, actual values, and submit it to you. Even if you start measuring the data and you start generating the CBAM report, calculating your factory's emissions, the default values used for precursors can still inflate your final SE. So having the actual values of precursors is also very important. So you need to get those precursors actual emissions data from the suppliers to avoid that. Let's talk more about these precursor default values because they are the hidden cost multipliers and they are the key risks here because measuring the data at our own installations and calculating the emissions numbers for our own emissions is in our control. We can do it if we start measuring and doing those calculations. But we are also dependent on the suppliers' precursor related emissions on suppliers. So they need to provide us that data, and that is the key risk to this entire exercise. The CBAM calculates emissions for complex good as a sum of direct emissions at our plant plus embedded emissions of all the relevant precursors. So your final SE cost, SE number is calculated based upon your own direct emissions plus your precursors direct emissions. Hence, you are directly impacted if those precursor emission numbers are not available. If even you have multiple precursors and you have got the data for some precursors, but even one precursor, if it lacks in actual verified data, that precursor is calculated using the default values and final product SE increases automatically because of that. So verified actual precursor data is very critical in this regard because upstream emissions often represent 40 to 70% of total embedded emissions. In many cases, in complex goods, their own direct emissions are very less. But the emissions coming from the precursor is the major portion of their final SEE. So around 40 to 70% of the SE value comes from the precursor. Hence, it is very important to get the precursors actual emissions data. Lack of supply readiness is directly going to increase exporters' CBAM cost. Precursor SE will be on higher side if supplier uses default values. This will directly impact the exporters' SE values, resulting in higher CBAM cost. Default values are applied if precursor data is available but not verified. So getting verified actual data is very important. Or you need to arrange for that verification. So here is one case study of the product is there are two products SS pipes, CN codes 7304-4100 and 7306-4000. This first set of tables, this shows the calculations using transitional phase default values, and the second set of tables shows the calculation using definitive phase default values for India. And we can see how the things change with definitive phase default values. So let me zoom it more. So here, these two products are like seamless pipes and welded pipes. SE direct is the direct emission happening at the factory during this production process. SEE direct is the portion coming from the precursor. You can see here that major portion is coming from precursor. For the factory, it is 0.011, whereas the precursor embedded emission is 2.080. Actually, it is not. It is the final direct after totaling the embedded emissions. Precursor emissions is here. So this calculation is using the default values for transitional phase for these particular precursors 2.1, 1.860, 2.210. These are the default values, EU default values. This report was calculated using the default values for precursors in transition phase, and they got the SCE direct of 2.080 and 2.304, even though they had 0.011 as their own emission. Because of precursor, they have got this number. But now when we change these precursor default values with the definitive phase default values, which are 7.128. This 2.140 has become 7.128 in the definitive phase. This 1.860, same CN code, gets the default value at 7.139 for year 2026. In 27, it will be more. This 2.210 becomes 7.150 now. And now you can see your emission remains the same. You are doing the same emission in your factory, but still your final SE has increased so much. From 2.080, it has become 7.391. And from 2.304, it has become 7.427 in definitive phase. So we cannot continue using these default values. We need to get these actual figures for these precursors to avoid this. So now last thing is like based upon all these this discussion related to verification, default values. What are the action items for the exporters? So there are like some immediate action items and there are some strategic action items. So immediately upstream supply chain readiness needs to be checked, and it is a deciding factor for competitiveness. So identify data gaps in upstream supply chain, start supplier engagement programs so that suppliers are aware and uh, they are helped to generate measure their data. They are asked to measure their data. Data cannot be measured at the last stage. Like we need to generate the report in December 2026 for whole year 2026. We cannot, if the data is not measured from January 2026, we will not have that data available in December, and we cannot generate the reports um, in that last month. So we need to start measuring the data from like on immediate basis. From January itself, we need to start measuring the data so that the data is available for the reporting purpose. Align contracts with the suppliers to include CBAM data obligations. Implement auditable emissions monitoring systems. So in your factories, you need to have that process of auditable emissions monitoring. So that includes two parts. Like first is measuring methodology. You need to set up a methodology at your factory to measure that data. First thing is measuring. If you have not measured the data, you cannot generate the report. So first thing is measuring, and measuring in such a way that you can have those evidences ready for the verification. And second aspect of this auditable emissions monitoring is reporting and evidence management. So cleancarbon.ai is going to help you in this aspect. You can generate your reports. You can enter your CBAM data in Clean Carbon application. You can upload your evidences along with your reporting data, and Clean Carbon AI generates the CBAM reports, which is compliant with the EU CBAM methodology and guidelines, which will be acceptable to EU accredited verifier. And easily auditors can audit your data based upon available supporting documents that can be attached in Clean Carbon AI. Auditors can directly log into the system and see your data. So it gives credibility to your data. So Clean Carbon AI is definitely is the game changer in this whole CBAM exercise. You need to prepare for physical audits also. Then the cost is on to exporters. So you need to budget for those third party verifications. Even if the list is not available, at some point it will get available, and you need to arrange for that. And identify and prepare for the evidence documents. So this measuring methodology will help you with that you need to set up a methodology. You need to identify which data files you are going to manage and will provide as evidence for the CBAM data. Now, there are some strategic action items also that you can have, like prefer suppliers who can provide verified SEO data. So supplier engagement is very crucial. Suppliers precursor emission data is very crucial in getting lesser CBAM cost and verification certificate. So this is not just a compliance. So it should be mandatory for the supplier to provide that verified actual emissions data. So you can have the strategy, like you can prefer the suppliers who are aligned with this CBAM process, and they can provide you actual data. Next is investment in lower carbon production routes to lower our direct emissions. And we can consider this as opportunity, not just like problem. This is a you can position like once you are ready with you have all the measuring methodology and reporting and evidence management ready with you. You have verified CBAM actual data, then it becomes your USP in the market, in the export market, EU export. So you can take this as your commercial advantage. So yeah, this can be also seen as opportunity. Yeah, so that's it for today's discussion. We can have few questions.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you, ma'am. That was very simple explanation of the most complicated regulations globally, highly technical and very specific in nature. And as ma'am explained, default values have deliberately been designed to be punitive in nature, which means they have kept the values very high, in fact, one of the highest for India, so that the intention is to discourage the use of default values and promote the use of actual emissions. That also results in carbon tax from 26. And the verification rules that ma'am explained, the who will bear the cost for the verification, the physical site visit, the virtual visits, when will that happen, everything. So we'll take one or two questions, and rest all the questions can be put in the chat box, and we'll mail you all the answers. Now we cannot take all the questions because of lack of time. So with your permission, ma'am, I'll take just one or two questions. So ma'am, there is one question from Mr. Ravya Kaur Chadda. He says that he's working for a wire company and exports insulated copper wires to EU. Now, some part of their produced wires, ma'am, has aluminium component. Now, he wants to know whether his product, which has aluminium components, falls into the CBAM regulation or not.
So ideally, CBAM has declared some CN codes across sectors, which which come under CBAM regulations, and for those CBAM reporting is mandatory. There are there are other goods which are not directly under CBAM, but if they contain any aluminum or steel component, the CBAM report might be asked at the EU level, and that can be applicable. Uh, it is better to have the CBAM report in this case.
Perfect.
It is purely based upon the CN code actually, but many times the buyer asks for the CBAM report, even if that CN code is not under CBAM regulation. So in that case, we need to provide that.
Yeah, to add to what ma'am said, Mr. Ravya, our team will reach out to you and you could let us know the product. They will verify the HSN code whether your product falls or not. Also, as ma'am said, more and more products and sectors are going to be covered under the CBAM as the scope is getting expanded from 2030 also. There is one question, that is, who will be the report verifier in India? I think I'll answer that question. As of now, the European Union Commission has not published any accredited verifier in India. We are all waiting for the verifier list to be published, but they are saying that verifiers tentatively on a possibility is that the verifiers under the EU ETS could be the verifiers for the report, but we have to wait when they publish the report. We won't be able to take more questions, just 2-3 more. Akash and Pranayji both are raising hands. Please put your questions in the chat box and then we can answer your questions. There is one question: if products are not exported to Europe, is it required to have CBAM? No. So any product from any part of the world, if it has to enter the European Union Commission market to be sold there or used, that product has to be under the CBAM compliance. As simple as that. There is one more question by Akash. He asks about until official list of accredited verifiers is released, who would verify reports until then? Now, reports and the credibility of the reports also depends on the kind of consultants or the verifier or CBAM first verifiers like Clean Carbon you're working with. because these reports prepared by Clean Carbon in the market is accepted by the European Union Commission, and all the major clients have been reporting for the past 2 years. There have been no major issues so far. So to answer your question, these reports are accepted. Now verifier will only verify the accuracy of the data. Again, to prove the accuracy of the data, the advanced analytics driven software prepared by cleancarbon.ai has all the records and audit trails that can prove the verified and the veracity of the data. Last question by Pranayji. He asks, in cases where default values are used, how can the specific electric consumption be determined? Ma'am, would you like to take that?
Case where the default values are used, how can the specific electricity consumption be determined? It is based upon the emission factor. So in case of like default values, you need to use the grid publicly available grid emission factor as a multiplier, and based upon that you can calculate it.
Yeah. This is the last question, guys. If you have any more queries, please put it in the chat box or write to us. You will all get the recording of the webinar and other updated PDFs, which has all the question answer to clarify all your doubts on CBAM. The last question is there any benchmarking values of SEE? And if that exceeds, there is any penalty applied, ma'am?
Yes, means it doesn't work that way that up to this number it is free and then it applies penalty. It is like they have released the benchmarks based upon your production route and many other aspects, and that number is deducted from your final SE before calculating the tax. So if your SE is 2.0 and there is a benchmark of 1, then you will be charged for the extra 1 SE, 1 ton of carbon per ton. So that is calculated based upon the benchmark. So benchmarks are available.
There's one more question, that having any green certification like green steel certification would directly help in decreasing CBAM cost, or it only depends on the emission reports? It only depends on the emission reports. Yeah, ma'am, please take.
Yes, it will help because if you have any green certificate, I guess you will have that emission data also. So for calculation, the process is same, even if you have green or non-green material. But definitely for green material, emission numbers will be very less, and those will be considered in calculation, and your final emission will be reduced because of that.
Pranaj, he has one question. He asks that we carried out e-quoting at our e-quote supplier's plant. The supplier has provided the related emissions data. Could you please confirm where these emissions data could be entered in the CBAM report? Yeah, for that we'll have to talk in a detailed one-to-one conversation, and we could guide you how to file the CBAM report. Last question by Sanjay ji. What will be the minimum quantity in terms of tons to have CBAM mandatory? See, CBAM is mandatory for all the suppliers from across the world who export to European Union Commission. So the 90 ton, which is for annual, that only applies to the importer, not to suppliers, right, ma'am?
50 tons. It
sorry,
is for
50
importer.
tons. Yeah.
Importer for total import means it can be steel, aluminum, anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Total import should not exceed 50 tons. Then in that case, they are exempted from CBAM. But at like very moment when they exceed that 50 tons, it is applicable to entire import.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this simple explanation. We have more questions. We'll try to answer all these questions in the email sent to you, and someone from our team will reach out to you, particularly to Pranayji and Sudhirji. We are sorry we are not able to answer the question because of lack of time, but someone from our team will reach out in the next 20 minutes or so. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your explanation. And the conclusion is that CBAM is in the mandatory phase. If we do not use actual emissions data, we are going to pay as a supplier more carbon tax, because that will result into more emissions, again resulting in carbon tax, the penalty, the venting, and multiple other financial implications on not just the suppliers but the importers also. Same for the verification, guys. I'm reiterating again. So far, the EU has not published accredited list of verifiers. We have to wait and see who are those verifiers, who are, whether they're going to be India or they're going to be from which part of the world, what are the criteria. All this will be made clear as soon as the European Commission publishes the report. Thank you, ma'am. Your end remarks, and then we'll end the webinar.
Yeah, as we saw, like EU CBAM has changed a lot in definitive phase. It is more punitive with more stricter rules, more stricter verification requirements. So we cannot like it is not optional anymore. We have to do it, otherwise we will lose the business, or we will be penalized with the cost. So and we are here to help you in this. Like this is not a simple. These calculations are not simple. There are different major, minor requirements which needs considered on case-to-case basis. So we are here to help you as a clean carbon team. We have a very robust tool, very user-friendly tool, and very supportive customer support team to guide you in this whole exercise. So please reach out for your queries and requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And we are having another session on India CBAM registry portal, which is scheduled to take place on January 20th in Delhi. If you want to know more about what is India CBAM registry portal, which is a platform to help and create an ecosystem for seamless CBAM compliance, and industry bodies have come together to launch the platform like FICCI, SCPC, and Clean Carbon, then Dhirubhai Ambani Law School ESG. Please reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy if you could participate and join us for a conversation on January 20th. To all the participants on this webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.